What's going on? Boys, arm yourselves. Life stuff. We've been on a bit of a roll lately. 3 topics today, all related, but too intertwined, so we will start with the first one. A look at one step in consciousness. A couple videos ago, someone commented something perfect. A way of looking at states of consciousness. And comments like that one are part of why I do this. That's what I'm talking about, Shadows. You know I love that shit. States of consciousness broken into states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. I've been thinking about that for a few days now. Simple, elegant, and right. Now, what we are about to think about is not the end goal. It is an interesting step along the path you can reach, should reach. And one of the reasons I love Michael Kirkbride is, even with Chim, a supposed peak of consciousness, peak of existence, he makes it clear that peak is not the end. It is one step, perhaps the highest step we can think about, or people in the Elder Scrolls universe can conceive of, but just because that is the limit of our present comprehension does not in any way mean that is all there is. There are greater peaks we can't see. Anyway, a step along the consciousness path you can reach, should try to reach, and is interesting because it combines those states of consciousness that commenter described. In this space, you're on a beach. Your conscious thoughts are solid. They're the sand. You're walking around all day building sandcastles, using solids to create small structures. And you are always doing that. Then you have your unconscious. That's the ocean. You can see it, it's always there, but you don't go in there. And then, one of the most interesting parts I'm finding is the foam from the waves, where the water meets the sand, where the unconscious meets the conscious. There is this constant fuzz. And the word fuzz is appropriate here because the foam reminds me of, I don't know if it would be a band or a project. I know it's an album. I'm pretty sure it was a Ty Segall project, but it's called Fuzz. It released when I was in high school, and I really liked it, but it's not the sort of music, for me anyway, that you just throw on. It is a certain sound that evokes a certain feeling, like this meeting of unconscious and conscious. This fuzz, this foam, this sort of constant rhythmic static that vibrates you and feels like anything could crawl up out of it. I'll link one of my favorite songs from that project in the description. You can feel it. And your sand, your sand castles, and that foam make up your conscious walking around mind. I think because it's common to think about the shadow and the unconscious as these inaccessible parts of ourselves, we forget they are always there. When you're on the beach, you might not be in the ocean, but the ocean is always right there, and the waves and the foam are always invading and mingling with your sand, your conscious mind. And you can feel that because you're going to spend most of your day either participating in or watching yourself build sandcastles with that foam touching you now and then, these strange thoughts that you're thinking but you didn't think of, fading in and out of your attention. And then you could, probably should, consider the wind the gaseous part of your consciousness or part or level of consciousness, but I'm going to take it in a different direction that suits both the example and our perspective a bit better. The transmissions. He joined Airborne. He was 38 years old. Why the fuck would he do that? Kurtz tells you why. It's because it was like he was shot in the forehead with a diamond bullet. They are hyper-focused transmissions of consciousness that I think come partially from whatever is deep, deep within you and from somewhere else. But you know you're experiencing a transmission when the message strikes you like a diamond bullet. They are immediate, they are crystal clear, and they're even emboldening because you just got zapped with orders. You just received extra dimensional intelligence telling you how the game is played and which moves you need to make. Kurtz went Special Forces at his age because he knew. He saw it. And unlike people who don't receive these sorts of transmissions, he seized it. Clear and emboldening. The circumstances of your material reality don't matter because you are receiving directions from something that understands the reality you think is reality is nothing more than sand. Even the structures you build that you think are real structures, this other thing and your directions recognize them as facsimiles of structures. They don't matter. They aren't real. All that matters is seizing upon this transmission you've received. Your reality will bend itself around you when these things hit you. Now, that is a lot for a beach, so let's just think about the beach here for a moment. This step in consciousness, this location you can reach, is realizing that you are on a beach. You're on a beach right now, but you might not realize it. This step is realizing that you're on that beach. And then realizing, once you have realized you are here, you don't necessarily need to do anything. This consciousness ecosystem is happening whether or not you do anything. Whether you lean back and take it in or try to do something, the ocean is still there. The sand is still there. The beach is still there. You are still, once again, almost, well, not, you're building thought structures out of sand, but you're going to be building them whether you participate in your own building them or not. There are always going to be waves, there's always going to be that foam, and the things that wash up among the foam, amongst the foam. Recognizing that this is a state of consciousness and it's happening. You don't have to do anything. Whether or not you do anything, it's happening. All these different sorts and levels of consciousness are always interacting. And for some reason, it feels like you could stop here. This could be the achievement, but this is just a beach. There's an entire universe out there, not even necessarily within your own mind, but within consciousness. You got it, but there's more to get if you want to get it. And this leads us into, or this state leads us into, the two intertwined points and probably the video's title. One of my favorite things Lyle's ever said is, if your flaw can get you laid, it's not a flaw. Now, I would adjust that sentiment and adjust it in two ways. Firstly, if you can spin your flaw as a positive, it's not really a flaw. Now, it is still a flaw, but there's a distinction to be made there between something that can be spun as positive and something that is just negative. Secondly, if you are with it, you are going to be trying to figure out how to spin every negative into a positive, but it is still valuable to be aware of what you are doing, or the consequences of what you're doing. Knowing that even if you have spun this thing that could be potentially damaging into a positive, it is still, or still carries, damaging aspects or limiting aspects. Aspects which you are probably right to be cautious of admitting to yourself and especially to others the negative aspects of, because when you are admitting to them, you're probably admitting to them in an effort to be honest and in an effort to not to limit yourself, to be aware that there are alternatives out there and you're aware of them. Even if you are doing what you're doing because it works and for good reason. Because almost always, right to be cautious, because almost always, other people are going to take that admission and try to destroy you with it, or twist your arm in some way. So you will probably be more effective and less vulnerable materially and emotionally, either by not admitting you're aware of these flaws, these negative aspects, or trying to pretend they don't exist at all. But still, I would encourage you to admit to them, at least to yourself, so you don't tighten a rope so tight around your neck you can't get out, or you blind yourself. Even if you continue to do what you're doing with good reason. One of my examples I've been aware of for a long time, but felt a lot today. I assume the worst in all things, always. And I do this for two reasons. One, most things, most of the time, are bad and don't turn out well. If you afford yourself room to hope in almost all situations, all you're doing is opening up your plate armor chest mail and asking to be shot in the chest. And two, more importantly on the practical level, if you are wasting energy hoping things are going to turn out better, then that's energy or time thinking, whatever you want to call it, not spent taking actions to avoid the worst outcome. In accepting the worst possible outcome, and maybe even an outcome that is worse than that, if you can imagine it, which you should be imagining it, you eliminate hesitation and indecision. This horrible thing is what's coming, and everything I'm doing, and not imagining, not thinking, doing, all action, is to deal with that. Assuming worse than the worst and not letting yourself hope makes you so much faster. You can stomp out problems before they get bad, and you'll probably be acting proactively enough. You will deal with problems before they even have the opportunity to become problems. It's insane how effective a person you can become when you don't hope. That is why I always assume the worst. It always gets results. It always keeps me safe. It always keeps me acting instead of thinking and worrying. I do this for good, learned reasons, rational reasons, and practical receipts. But it comes with consequences. Good fortune is very rare, but it can happen. And when you assume the worst, you are going to get better, more consistent results, but you are almost always going to be eliminating that chance of good fortune, eliminating your possibility of seeing the fruits of another possibility. Even if you are probably not going to see that good fortune, if you were to try to structure your life strategy around it, in choosing the worst, you are severely limiting that possibility of good fortune from happening at all. Again, still can happen, even if you do assume the worst, but that's the second part. For me, the so few times those high level impossibility good fortune things happen, I don't feel them. I appreciate them, I incorporate them, but I don't enjoy them. And I don't know why exactly. Probably because I know this is chance, not strategy. Maybe that's why I don't enjoy them, because I don't view them. I don't view that sort of good fortune as an achievement of strategy, but as good fortune. So I don't enjoy them because I don't feel like I can enjoy anything I haven't earned, personally. Really enjoy them, I mean. Because if you don't know how to secure them with strategy, then they can be taken from you and you won't know how to get them back. Maybe that's why I don't enjoy them. Extreme and proactive pessimism is the better strategy, but in dedicating yourself to it and reaping those benefits, you cut yourself off from other possibilities. Even if trying to build your life around those possibilities is not going to get you anywhere and you know it and that's why you don't do it, you you can and should still be aware that there is something else that you are not, that you're cutting yourself off from. You can still do what you do and understand the consequences of doing what you do. Real life example that happened today. I found out today some people are trying to get me in legal trouble. Because what do you do when you hate somebody and you don't have the cock to face them directly? You try to put them in a bad legal slash law enforcement situation. I have first-hand experience with that. Skimmerlit has felon charges. Not a felon conviction, but again, all that matter is your charges. I don't know exactly who's doing it, but I've needed to work a few times recently with this woman who seemed really scared of me. It's been a while since I've mentioned this message. Heart sounds. This EMS thing some medical dude taught my father when he was doing medicine, and then he taught me because I think it's a good life lesson. Heartbeat sounds. You don't need to be a heart surgeon to know there's something wrong with a heart. If you listen to 3,000 hearts, the first thing you do when you start treating somebody is listen to their heart, all their hearts. You're going to realize pretty quickly what a heartbeat sounds like, is supposed to sound like. Meaning, when you listen to someone's heart and something sounds wrong, you might not know exactly what's wrong, but you know that something is wrong with their heart specifically. And to translate that into day to day life, pay attention to the heartbeat of your surroundings. There's a rhythm your day to day follows every day. There's a rhythm to the way things happen to you. Meaning, when something is off, you might not know what it is, but you recognize that something is amiss, or the response is not within the parameters you're used to, and you can start assessing the problem. I know I have an effect on people, but I'm not used to people being terrified of me like that. So after doing some sleuthing, I put together that some people, I have some ideas of who, but I don't know exactly who, has been filling this woman's head with the idea that I am a violent, loose cannon felon who illegally packs a gun, and if I do anything odd, she should call the cops on me. And calling the cops on me probably isn't going to do anything, because I'm not breaking any laws, but the way things pan out, people who deserve to be punished don't get punished. If you're someone who follows laws, the dummy you are, someone who's not going to fight authority, then you're an easy target. I'm learning cops don't want to do any work and don't want to put their lives at risk. Meaning, if you are someone who is potentially threatening, maybe even is, oh, I don't know, driving up into people's driveways, strangers' driveways, and threatening to shoot their dog, which is that's an ironic thing. That's not the sort of person who is going to get arrested, even though that is the exact sort of person who should be arrested. No, it's going to be the person they can roll over because you're trying to do everything right. In other words, I look bad and I'm not going to fight, so calling the cops at all only creates opportunities for something bad to happen. Somebody is aware of that, and that's what they were doing. And today, for some reason, that hurt emotionally, confirming the parts I could confirm. That I am going to be a villain for the rest of my life, and constantly at risk of legal and mortal peril just because someone hated me and was smarter than I was at the time. And this instance is so clever because the safest thing for me to do is to stop carrying a gun. If I stop carrying a gun, then I'm at the mercy of these nut jobs who should be arrested but aren't. To make myself safer in one way, I have to make myself very vulnerable in another. And I don't know which is worse. There is not a right answer to this. And because I despise people so thoroughly, and sometimes I'm starting to vibrate on higher frequencies, I already know how I'm going to respond to this. I already have a plan. I have imagined the worst ways and then worse this could turn out, and I have a plan. God, I love myself. But it still hurt really bad emotionally. And I'm just standing in my office, zoned out, when witchy INFJ, whom I haven't seen in a few months now, drops in. And the first thing she says to me is not, hey, or what's going on, or good to see ya. It is, oh my god, are you okay? And all I'm thinking at that moment is, oh my god, does it look that bad? I'm not I'm not shivering, I'm not slumped over in a chair, I'm not crying. I feel like I'm just standing here, but apparently I looked bad enough to warrant that reaction from someone I haven't seen in a few months. And I told her I was fine, I'm fine, and then she said, no, you're not fine. And it took me everything in my power not to break down sobbing at that moment. Hit me all at once. Not the are you fine or what's wrong, but the no, you are not okay. But I said again, no, I'm fine, in a no offense, but I'm not going to. I'm not opening this with you right here, right now way. And then we went on to have a very normal interaction. I like high level INFJs because they're interesting, but I'm careful around them because of that right there. Well, not all of it, but that's one aspect about them that makes me uncomfortable. INFJs are very emotional creatures, but at the exact same time, simultaneously, they are also robot aliens. Instantly get the message, pretend like nothing is going on, even though I am evidently feeling something. And I know INFJs, I know despite her demeanor, she was feeling whatever I was feeling. Really uncanny and sad interaction that didn't help my feelings very much. Not that the reason I didn't start crying or stop myself from crying and talking all about it is, well, there are a bunch of reasons. The primary one is I don't like putting that sort of stuff on people. People don't actually care. They might care enough to notice that something is wrong and ask, but they do not care enough, and you will be inconveniencing them and probably dealing with other consequences if you actually tell them how you feel and externally feel it. So, in keeping my feelings inside at that moment as much as I could, I was accomplishing two things. One, I was not burdening, inconveniencing, or hurting her as much as breaking down would have, and I'm protecting myself from the consequences of breaking down and inconveniencing someone. Because I know she cares enough to ask, but she doesn't care enough to help me through this, and I wouldn't want to bother her with those sorts of problems or accept that sort of help if she really were offering it. So, all in all, safe, strategic, pessimistic move. Probably the best move. However, I denied her the opportunity to care on that level if she did happen to care on that level. 99.99% of human beings wouldn't for anybody, and she almost certainly didn't, but I denied her the opportunity to prove me wrong in a good way. I stand by my decision. I stand by most of my decisions because I'm right, but I didn't and often don't allow opportunities to be wrong. Because once again, if I were proven wrong in a good way there, it would be I would be proven wrong in a good way. I would be helped by something entirely outside my control. It in situations like it would have been winning, but it would have been winning in the wrong way. A way I don't think much of, I can't replicate, I'm not comfortable with, I wouldn't stake my life on. But I'm aware of that. I am aware I have every reason in the world to take the actions I take and to still acknowledge there are drawbacks, there are consequences. And I am probably not going to change my actions until I have very good reason, but in knowing about the consequences of my strategy, I know there are other strategies. We connect this segment with the first because I think this is the way, if you want to expand your consciousness, you should be looking at life. You aren't doing what you're doing because it's the one right way. You're doing what you're doing because it's the way best suited to you. And in your weaknesses, you see alternatives. And in at least being aware of those alternatives, you can learn to respect different forms of righteousness, even if you aren't respected in kind. And if for some reason you ever need to pivot your strategy, change your entire life, it's not like you're flailing around in the darkness at night. You're already aware of the alternatives. Different sorts of actions you can take, different mental states you can retreat to if you need to. But no, there's, once again, even if you're just admitting these things to yourself, because admitting them publicly is never a good idea if you're talking about practicality and results, you're locating yourself in an ecosystem of a bunch of different alternatives. If we're playing the righteousness and trying to be honest game, these are the things to keep in mind. Some things to keep in mind. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.